Hello and welcome to the Glen Arbor Community Church channel. We are a group of people who are eagerly pursuing the spread of the gospel of Jesus Christ from our corner of West Chicago, Illinois to the end of the earth. This week, Pastor Greg Staninger concludes our series on the book of Joshua as he explains how the book ends.
If you have your bulletin in there, I've placed Paula placed in our bulletin. It was supposed to be a landscape, and so on. And you can follow along. I'm going to use this in our series today, to end our series, and this is in Joshua. You'll find this picture. And it's the entire book of Joshua, and we're going to go through this whole thing. And this is by the Bible Project, and those of you may or may not be familiar with it. They put out a bunch of things like that, videos and cartoons. And one of the things they do is a cartoon going through this graphic almost for every book I believe it's for every book. And you can get this on wall posters or whatever. And I found it very helpful if you like a summary of the book that you're reading. They, of course, have their own maybe view or opinions that they're using. If you would like a landscape version of this, I have one that I can photocopy for you after the service. But you can follow along with us here, because we've come to the end. And you can see we've gone through only 8 of the chapters of the 24 in total. And let me go ahead and put this up. This is, and if I turn it on, that would help. This is our teaching series, and you can. This is how we plan them overall. And we did 8 on purpose, because we wanted to show God's methods and strategies for developing His people to do His work. There are multiple principles and truths and examples that we can glean from this book that we can directly apply. We went through a bulk of them the last several weeks, which is 1 through 8. And most of the, what we'll call the emergent truths are in there. And if you look at the book, there are many, many graphics. This is one graphic that I found, and there are other types of graphics. This is one of them, in one way, that Paul Bucknell, that he gives free use of, and that's why I'm showing it. And we can see the first 5 chapters. And let's see if I can make this work. Look at that. Woo! This is technology, baby. Working. So this first 5 chapters here on how God is developing His people. And He prepares Joshua as leader and establish him. And then He sends spies and so on. We've already gone through that. And He crosses the river Jordan, which is transforming symbol of His people, transforming His people to do His work. They're ritually prepared through circumcision and worship to be God's people, and this is where they are prepared for that work. This is, in essence, took 40 years. I was thinking about this. How long is 40 years? Well, this is 2025. We've been here for 37. We're almost at 40 years, if you can imagine it. That's how long they were in the wilderness, and then they get here. So He might do something similar with us. Then their conquering work, which is this section, the middle section, 6 through 12. And we see the victory of Jericho and the defeat of Ai, and then once they regroup, they start following God again, and then there's victory. The rest of the chapters are accounts of other victories against other kings. And this is all part of God implementing His strategy, right? And for victory. When Joshua and Israel followed the plan, there was victory. When they didn't, there was not so victorious or not of defeat. When they didn't follow God, they failed, and that's very simple. The last section, of course, is dividing Israel up and establishing the land, and there's a lot of administration that takes place in that last section. And at the end, that's where Joshua says his goodbyes and parting speech we will take a look at. So we have 3 sections: preparing, conquering, and dividing. as far as this book is going. And that's it in a nutshell. And we're going to review this whole book, all 24 sections, in 25 minutes. Ready? Here we go. Yeah, ready as you're going to be. Strap in, baby. Here we go. All right. So in these next slides, I'll be using graphics again, created by the Bible Project. And the story so far is that God promised Abraham to create a nation of Israel, right? So this is what this graphic is about. So he promised Abraham way back there. He says, oops, I didn't want that. That's the problem with that phone thing. There we go. All right. He promises Abraham, remember he said, as the stars, your lineage will be as the stars. You will be, a great nation will come out of you, even though he was 100. And he promises that. And he uses Moses to bring the Hebrews out of slavery, out of Egypt. And he gave them the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai, right? And then they went through the trial of the 40 years. Moses brings them to the entryway of the promised land, but doesn't quite make it himself. He dies before turning over leadership to Joshua. So that's where we're in our book. So in his introduction, here we go. Mike pointed out, and I'm going to point out that who talked about that section. Mike pointed out several things about Joshua. He was an assistant to Moses. He was one of the 12 spies. He was one of the 2 that gave the good report and demonstrated unwavering faithfulness and leadership. He was obedient to the little things, and he was a man of character. So you could count on him. Oops. So let's see. And then that's where we get this transition. We start Joshua 1. That's right. Okay, here we go. And chapter 1, and that was with me, and we had learned about the transition of the command of a nation of Israel, how he's to be strong and courageous. He assumes command, and then the people confirm his authority, all in chapter 1. And that's when our famous verse, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So this is one of the more famous verses from this book. So what does he do next? Well, he sends out the spies. We're going to go after Jericho. And so he sends the spies and to Jericho. Joshua, he sends the spies secretly to scout out the land of Canaan, particularly in the city of Jericho. They encounter Rahab, and this is where Dean talked about that. The spies enter Jericho, and they stay in the house of Rahab, the prostitute. When the king of Jericho learns of their presence, he sends soldiers to try to capture them. Of course, Rahab hides the spies and lets them go. This is a symbol, or not a symbol, a picture of Rahab's faith. So she heard about all these stories and believed, right? She expresses her belief in God and acknowledges the fear that has gripped the people of Jericho. And that's when we learned about how God was working there. They agree to protect Rahab and their family because of her faith, and then they return back and report to Joshua. The themes here are that God has a mission for you, right? God has a mission for you too, and that if he can use someone like Rahab, he can certainly use you, and God uses an obscure person to provide for others, and was the message there. Chapter 3, as we're reviewing this, so we prepare for the crossing, right? We're getting ready. After 3 days of camping by the Jordan River, Joshua instructs the Israelites to prepare themselves spiritually by consecrating themselves, as God is about to perform wonders among them. They have divine assurance. God assures Joshua that he will exalt him in the eyes of the Israelites, just as he was with Moses. This establishes Joshua's leadership and encourages the people to trust in his guidance. And then there's the miraculous crossing, the, again, parting of the Jordan River, or at least holding it back. And What's similar about that is, I wanted to point out, is it's like two baptisms. Like they go through the crossing of the Red Sea, and then there's the crossing of the Jordan. And there's this, like a baptism, similar to the Christian walk. And you see these type of symbols. They're being re-baptized into this being of God's people. They've had their trial, and then they're going through this time. This was talked about by Chris, and he had 3 things. You learn patience. God is bringing judgment on Canaan after centuries of evil. He's made a promise. He's staying true to the word that he gave to Abraham, and provision. As the Lord was with Moses, so he's with Joshua. He's there. He's consistent all the way through this. Chapter 4. He establishes the memorial stones. The 12 stones were carried to their campsite at Gilgal. Then Joshua explains that these stones would prompt future generations to ask about their meaning, and then again shows God's faithfulness. The chapter emphasized the importance of remembering God's faithfulness and significance of the Israelites' transition from wandering in the wilderness to entering the promised land. So Mike shared on this, and he had 3 points. You notice there's a pattern here. 3 points, 1 chapter. Remember, and always beginning with the same letter. Do you see a pattern here? First there was P, chapter 4 obviously is R. Remembering, relying, and retelling. Remembering God's faithfulness in our past so we don't forget. Relying upon God's faithfulness today, and retelling of God's faithfulness for the faith of others to come. You know, it's interesting when I was preparing for this, I went through a lot. I did go through all the video. All these videos are available on YouTube for if you would like to go back to them and see these relive Joshua, as it were, through this. Chapter 5, and here it comes. They crossed Jordan, and then this is the part that I had talked about. And remember that the Israelites had been in the desert for 40 years. Many of them had passed away. Some of them had been born many of them born while they're in this transition, while they were in the wilderness. And so they had not been circumcised. And so they needed that to happen to obey God's law and renew their covenant with God. And it symbolizes their commitment to God as they prepare to do their next work, which is to conquer the Canaan. So they celebrate the Passover. That was where also what happened there, manna stopped. No more manna for you, as it were. So God's not providing for them. This trek is over. Now you're going to be providing for as part of what I'm giving you. And that's where he encounters the commander of the Lord's army. So they're part of, and he's going to let him in on the plan, right? He's saying, okay, you're part of this army. You're going to be part of what we're doing. And what we learned was changes are always coming in our life. And we're consecrated already for the next step. And the other thing he did there, he rolled away the reproach. We kind of debated what that might be. What is the reproach? Was it that the reproach of being in slavery, or the reproach that they were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years? Whatever it was, but they were now part of God's army. All right, we're getting to the end of the chapters here. This section talks about now getting into some new territory. So, chapter 6, which we did go through, God instructs Joshua to lead the Israelites in a unique siege against the city of Jericho, right? The Israelites are commanded to march around the city walls once a day for 6 days, with the 7 priests carries the trumpets, and on the 7th, they blow the 7 times and start screaming, and that brings the walls down. And Dean was the one that went through that. I thought that was a great structural experiment in looking like, wow, I don't know if I would build a wall on a sliding slope, But that's the way it was. And we were talking about how I remember Dean asked a lot of us, well, what do you think was happening here? And one of the things I remember from civil engineering class is that putting walls on sliding slopes is bad when there's low vibration. And so like someone doing what? Marching, or any also waves from an ocean cause the same type of vibration. So that's hard on walls that are on a slope. And whatever way, I still think God was certainly involved. God certainly was involved in that, and the walls came tumbling down. What's some of the things that we learn that Dean talked about? Sometimes God's methods aren't as direct as we would like them. They may seem impractical to us. What are we marching around the city for? This doesn't make sense. Why am I doing this? Why am I in this sickness? Or why do I have to be in this tough relationship? Why do I seem to be the brunt of everyone's joke? Whatever it is that we're enduring, He's asking us to do, it doesn't seem right. We need to remember we aren't as complex as God, so we may never understand all the reasons He does things the way He does. And God may reveal His reasons and methods to us, but He doesn't owe us an explanation necessarily. We need to be willing to trust God even when He doesn't explain Himself to us. Chapter 7, we recount the defeat of the Israelites at Ai due to the sin of Achan, I guess it's pronounced, who disobeyed God's command by taking forbidden spoils from Jericho. This act of disobedience led to Israel's unexpected defeat, causing Jericho to seek God's guidance. The chapter emphasized the importance of obedience to God and far-reaching consequences of hidden sin for the community. Ultimately, the family faced severe punishment, highlighting the seriousness of transgression against the divine commands. This is Chris did this, and these were his points. He compared the kindness of God versus the severity of God. So both are in balance. These two balances in this. And the valley of Achor, which was what? A place of trouble. Do you guys remember that? No? Starting to come back. It was a place of trouble, but it was also a door of hope as they get ready to take the rest of the promised land. Finally, to the chapter that we also reviewed, chapter 8, we learn it recounts Israel's successful capture of the city of Ai. I keep saying Ai, it's Ai, and the importance of obedience to God. We learn about God's assurance, God's strategic planning, and the battle itself, and then the covenant renewed again. After the victory, Joshua builds an altar there. And Mike had 4 points here. Who remembers them? Right here. Don't be arrogant, repent and regroup, rely on God's wisdom, and give God the glory. So that's the end of what we actually went through on sermons. Whew. Now, we're going to get into the new other sections that we didn't cover. And we're going to cover these fairly quickly. What happens in these other chapters? So as we move on, and we'll move through our picture, our word picture as we do it. So here's chapter 9, and the first chapter is the Gibeonites. So that's a neighboring tribe, and they deceive the Israelites by pretending to be from a distant land. They present themselves as weary travelers offering a treaty of peace despite their true intentions, right? Joshua and Israelite leaders exclude Joshua, agree to make peace with them, but later they learn that they were actually from the region. Instead of attacking them, the Israelites decide to make them their servants for carrying, look at that, I'll do the pointer, and that's where we are. This chapter highlights the importance of discernment and consequences of deception in Israel leadership's decisions. So, again, one of the things that highlights this is they went ahead and did it. And do you think they asked God about this? No. They forgot again to ask God, should we get in alignment with them? They didn't ask, and they just did it, and then they learned, oh my gosh, they're actually in this land. So that's what Joshua 9 is about. The next two is, oh, there we are, yep. And then 10 and 11, the Israelites, led by Joshua, successfully conquer the land of Canaan after a series of battles against the kings. And Joshua 10 recounts the battle against the 5 kings of the Amorites, where Joshua and the Israelites, aided by divine intervention, defeat the armies of these kings, demonstrated God's faithfulness and power. In 11, they continue with Joshua leading the Israelites into battle against the remaining kings, showcasing his leadership and strategic prowess. The chapter emphasizes the importance of unity and obedience to God's commands, culminating in the complete destruction of the Canaanite forces. So these chapters highlight the Israel's triumph over their enemies and their adherence to God's promises, marking the significant chapter in the biblical narrative of the conquest of Canaan. That's what is the difference between these two. So here they may make friends, but they were deceived. Here they just went ahead, did what God commanded, and they had victories. Joshua 12 just lists the victories under the leadership of both Moses and Joshua and talks about them in general. And this is probably why we decided to do this in a summary form, because it's more accounts and dictation, or more a series of events, and particularly as we get into this section. So 13 through 22, and Joshua 13 through 22, the Israelites are instructed to divide the promised land among them. So the first thing that's important to note is how extremely boring this is, because it is administrative. So they're basically dividing up land, and we didn't want to go through all of that. There is good stuff, though, to glean out of this. It's very administrative, but it's very important to Israel, because this is going to be their future, right? So this is how this is part of God's promises, and this is how it's being divided up. So there's this divine commandment. God instructs Joshua to divide the land. So he does it in all these 13 through 22, and emphasizes the importance of obedience to his promise. There's land allocation, and they talk about Levitical inheritance and cultural and spiritual significance, and then the ongoing fulfillment. And the chapter serves as a reminder that while significant victories have been achieved, the fulfillment of God's promises continues to unfold. So this passage illustrates the meticulous planning and divine guidance that underpin the Israelite settlement in the Promised Land. So this is the part I really was excited to get to, Joshua's final words. So this is the closure, or the end. We've made it to the end of our diagram. And Joshua delivers two significant farewell addresses to the Israelites, emphasize the importance of faithfulness and obedience to God. He starts at the same way he began. We began in chapter 1. Joshua doesn't insert himself into the story, even though the book's called Joshua. And what I really appreciate is he talks about God. He talks about God's significance. 23 is a reminder of God's faithfulness. So he kind of goes through everything I just went through. Look what God did. And I think it's important to go through what God did. And maybe this is something we should do with ourselves, is remembering what God has done. We have a prayer meeting this morning, and we were asking for things, asking for healing. We were asking for blessings and God to guide us in sharing the gospel. We asked for the service. We asked for reaching out to West Chicago. But we were reminded what he has done with us. What has he done with Glen Arbor? What has he done with you? How far has he taken you through your wilderness? And Joshua 23 is reminding them the faithfulness in helping them take the land. He warns against idolatry and getting too involved with the nations around them, urging the Israelites to remain steadfast in their covenant with God. That's what he focuses on in 23. And then 24, he continues this theme, warning that they turn away from God, that if they turn away from God, they will face judgment and loss of their inheritance, which seems to be a theme throughout the entire Old Testament as you read through the prophets. That as a continual struggle for Israel. And that's a continual struggle for us. Every day. Do I keep doing this? Do I keep following the Lord? Keep stressing, listening to Greg talk about Joshua and going through that diagram. Even has the word boring right on it. What does that mean to me? We're stressing the importance of God, loyalty to God and the consequences of disobedience, urging the people to love and cling to the Lord wholeheartedly. So these chapters serve as a reminder of God's promises and the need for believers to remain faithful in a relationship to Him. Well, why is that important? Because next time as we start the Christmas season, because Thanksgiving is this week, and then of course, then we're in then the stores are allowed to completely advertise all of Christmas. Not that they haven't already. They let loose. They pull. I think there's a magic lever that they pull. It's called Black Friday, and we're going to be talking about God with us. So if God is with us, Jesus came with us. What does that really mean for us on a daily basis? Because the daily grind every day, where He's working with us, what does that mean as we're going through our transition? We're being used by Him. He calls us our people. We're adopted into this, into the process that He's putting it. He puts us through a similar process. Long waiting periods or times where He's training us, where He has already sanctified us through the blood on the cross, and then He wants to use us in a different way. And it's obviously not exactly what Joshua went through, but it's the process I want you to look through. And it's very lengthy. We start with Joshua's a middle-aged man at the beginning, and then he's on his way out at the end. So we went through all of that. He went through all of that as an example of how the Lord works with His people. This is, again, I like this picture, just bringing this up again, just how all of this, there's this little line here, right here. I think there is. There we go. Yep, I'm connected to that. There we go. Right here. God's good purposes can always be gloriously fulfilled when we faithfully trust and obey Him. If you want to look at the one message that's in Joshua, that is it. So the book in general, Joshua leads Israel. He's sent out the spies. They went through the promised land, went through the battles of Jericho, Ai, all the victories, and then they do divide up the land, and they have these parting words. And again, the whole time, the Lord says, I've commanded you something. Have I not commanded you? Be strong, courageous, do not tremble, be dismayed. I'm with you wherever you go. I'm with you. And Joshua reiterates what, from his perspective on this, in 23:14. Now behold, today I am going the way of all the earth. He's going to die. And you know that in all your hearts and in all your souls that not one word of all that good works which the Lord your God spoke concerning you has failed. It has not failed. All have been fulfilled for you. Not one of them has failed. He says it again. And when we were singing that song, it says, He is worthy. I was thinking about that is Jesus has never failed us. And that's why He's worthy to open the scroll. That's why He's worthy. God is worthy of our of our obedience. That's why he's worthy of our attention. That's why it's worthy for us to get on our knees and pray to him or worship him, because of who he is. And this whole story that I just went through, even though it's lengthy, it shows a lifetime, a whole lifetime from beginning to end of his faithfulness to Joshua, the nation of Israel, and to us. Let's pray. I'll ask the music team to come on up. Lord, we thank you so much for staying with us. You've never failed us. You've never failed us. Sometimes it looks like it. I'll admit, there are times where I've said, Lord, you failed me. I think you messed up here. I felt that way. Ultimately, that turns out to not be the case. It always turns out that way. My ways are not your ways. My perspective is not your perspective. Lord, you have never failed me. You've never failed us. And we look to you for all these things. We ask that you show us, where are we at? Where do you have us in this story? Are we in the wilderness? Are we coming through the Jordan? Are we dividing and conquering? Are we obedient? Where are we in our walk with you right now? And I ask that you would point that out to us even now. And maybe we're in different places, in different parts of our lives. We ask that you would be with us again. Thank you that you have never, ever, ever failed us. Amen.
Thank you for watching our lesson today. We invite you to join us here at Glen Arbor Community Church every Sunday at 10 a.m. Our address is 204 Church Street in West Chicago, Illinois. For more information about our church, please visit us online at www.glenarborchurch.com or email us at info@glenarbor.org.